Hello, everyone. Good day to all of you coming from different parts of the world. I am Rod Arieta, the community choreographer of Pollinate Impact, dialing in from Manila, Philippines. And we are just waiting for others to come in. But while we wait, can we ask all those who are here to rename themselves to their name plus their organization? So just like ours, Rod, and then Pollinate Impact. So if I can ask everybody to rename themselves with their organization, that would be helpful. Thank you. Again, hi everyone. Just waiting for a few more people. While we wait, let's rename ourselves with our organization names also on our um, plates at Zoom. So like Rod Ariete and Pollinate Impact. We'll give maybe 2 more minutes and then we can start with our usual check. Um, I see some familiar faces here. Hi, Cynthia. Yes, fellow Gemini. All right, while we wait for the others to come in, maybe we can start with our usual pollinate check-in. Tess, can you please bring up our Mentimeter for us to start?
Yeah, sure. Just 1 minute.
Sure. Mm.
All right.
So Tess has posted the link on the chat. You can join. Joshua and Ed, please feel free to join as well. Um, then we're just going to present the results of our questions. All right. So our first question as usual, which country are you joining us from? So first we have some people in the Philippines. Thank you for joining us. Some from Kenya, Ghana, Tanzania, and Malawi. Great. Awesome to see everyone here. India as well. Awesome. We have a good spread of people from our network. Amazing. All right, let's move to the next. Nigeria also here. Amazing. So organizations right now, we have a bit of the ESOs are here, incubators, accelerators. For the person who answered other, can we know what type of organization you are in? There's two now. A consultant as well. You can type it in the chat if you want. All right, let's move on. Test to the next one. All right, so this is something to help our speaker for today, Joshua. Just wanted to ask what are the main funding sources that the organization currently relies on. So it seems that really grants are the most common funding sources. We see government grants, foundations, and philanthropic grants receive the most. And then we have corporate sponsorships and impact investors, just a little less. And the same thing with others. By others, if you can insert in the chat, what are the other funding sources that your organization relies on right now? For those who just joined us, hello. We're just doing the mentee right now to check in. If you want to catch up, I'll be posting the link again, and then you can also join us there. All right. Tess, let's move to the next slide. It's one word that comes to mind when you think about grant writing. Tedious seems to be something in the middle, exhausting, impact demonstration, time consuming, convoluted. Definitely, there's a lot of things that you have to think of when you're doing grant writing. Of course, you have to demonstrate the impact that you're making, sometimes over promising so that you're able to get the grant. Exhausting, detailed. All right. Uh, totally understand. Very valid answers. And then we'll move to our last slide. Which area of grant proposal development do you feel needs the most improvement in your organization? Crafting compelling narratives and aligning proposals with funder priorities seem to be two of the higher ones, and then project budgeting and financial planning as well. So crafting the compelling narrative. So, all right. I mean, that's great because it really aligns with our session today about crafting well, making a concept framework that will help us in developing our grant proposal. So definitely the session will align with that need. Um, all right. Thank you so much, everybody, for going through the mentee. Please feel free to continue on if you haven't yet. We'd still love to see your answers. But for now, we are so excited to get started today and get to know how we can boost our grant writing success through Assist Asia's own master concept framework. So the session is part one of a two-part series, and part one is really getting to know what this framework is about, its relevance, and as well as getting to start with what how to use this framework. And then part two will be diving deeper into it, and then really now getting into the nitty-gritty. So for part one, we are opening this up to the public. So welcome everyone again for coming. And then I will also email this. But for part two, we will be making this a members only session. So if you would like to join our next session for the master concept framework and boosting grant writing success, we can coordinate with you if you'd like to become a member so that you can join the second session. All right. But for now, let's get started and get ready to get to know how we can actually uh, increase our chances of getting our grant proposals approved and making sure that our narratives are compelling as what a lot of us need help on. So I will be passing on the room to Joshua to get us started for today. We are always so thankful to have Assist Asia to be here with us and to help us through our skill building workshops. So Joshua, please feel free to get started. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rod. So good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone, or whatever time it is in your location. So I am Joshua Pineda. I'm the research and acquisitions lead for Assist. Basically, I lead the grants team for Assist. So Assist has been uh, a, a development sector player since 2003 actually. So it's been 20 years since we have been working uh with the development sector, applying for different funding opportunities, grants by multilateral and bilateral institutions alike. So it we for the past 20 years, grants has been like the lifeblood of Assist. We can ascertain that there is a level of expertise that we have developed throughout the years, and it's something that we are not really that stingy about. So we one of our core focus has always been sharing it to other groups in the development sector, because we all are working um in development work one way or another, whether you're an incubator or an entrepreneur. There is a social difference that you want to address. And one of the things that we are truly passionate about is to help you guys to navigate the grants ecosystem. So without further ado, I'll ask Eds to present the slides. Basically, we are talking today about the Master Concept Framework. It's a new term for some of you. Maybe concept framework is a very a very academic term that you might have already encountered doing proposals or theses before. But why do we add the term master to it? So I'll just explain a bit about the logic of this. Assist when we were in our own experiences in developing the grant system that we have now, we have applied for like um 90 grants, I think 2 years ago. We applied 90 grant applications 2 years ago, and we really realized that every time that there's a new grant opportunity, we create a new grant idea, which is quite time consuming. I agree very much with the sentiments of the group. Like, grant applications are tedious, grant applications are too much work, to be honest, particularly getting the requirements, getting the right narrative correct, and how you align it with what the funder really wants to see. So for us, we realized that in order to streamline our process, we created what we call the master concept framework. So these frameworks, which I will introduce later, streamlined the very grand process that we are using right now, as well as, it enabled us to really quickly address or respond to grant applications. And we hope that this is something that you guys can adopt as well. And I think Rod also mentioned that this is a two-part series. So this is the first part of the series in developing your own master concept framework. So you might see that we are just at the introduction of it, and if you really want to get to know the second part, I think you need to engage with Rod and the Pollinate Impact team for the second part as well. In any case, the next slide, please. So for this session, we will be having three main sections. First is we need to define what the master concept framework is, at least for our definition, and maybe you guys can adopt that definition. The term master concept framework can be a blanket term that we use, but maybe you guys already have your own master concept frameworks in another name that you are calling it. Next is contextualizing your master concept framework. So in every opportunity, in every funding event, um, it should be noted that context is really important. So knowing why you are creating the master concept framework and knowing the alignment of your master concept framework with all the priorities within your localities, in your country, and even with your peers in the sector that you are active in, it really makes a difference. Then lastly is identifying the gaps and the solution. So this is an introduction on how you can really create the core concept of your master concept framework, or at least how you can structure it. And lastly, we will also have time for Q&A as well. So next slide, please. Let's start. Yeah. So defining your master concept framework. So next slide. So a master concept framework is a condensed conceptual document that describes your organization's development initiative and strategy. So basically, it's just a very descriptive document. It can be, a proposal that you already made before. I am aware that since you guys already have experience in grant application, whether it be government grant application, corporate or multilateral, bilateral grants, you had experience with creating your own proposals, and your organizations, your companies, and your business might also already have your own initiatives. It's just putting your own initiatives into words putting them in a specific document that will enable you to really pinpoint specific components of the concept that you are initiating. So basically the aim of this is to be able for you to make it easier for you to apply for grants, to make it easier for you to pitch them for meetings and for discussions with different funding institutions, different donors, because not because sometimes corporate partners are can also be donors. Sometimes CSR or corporate social responsibility can also come from our pitchings. So it we master concept framework can also be a source of that kind of initiative for you guys. So this is how we define the master concept framework in its whole. I do think, as I mentioned earlier, that you guys would already have your own initiatives or your own goals or your own business platforms that you want to fund, basically for grant applications rather, or through CSR, through partnerships, etc. But that is something that we can condense or create in the master concept framework. Next slide, Eds. So, as I mentioned, an MCF or Master Concept Framework can be a pitching tool. Maybe you guys already have a document of prepared, maybe a one-pager document detailing what your project is supposed to be. Um, then a business strategy. Maybe your initiatives are also intertwined with your own business itself. Like, for example, your own operations, your own target consumers, and business strategy. That is also fine. We can also package that as a master concept framework. And lastly, it can also be a proposal template, as I mentioned. So MCFs can be used for different grants and funding opportunities. I know you guys have already seen different funding opportunities, and they have very varied templates that they use. For example, USAID or US Department of State um, grant or funding opportunities would have very detailed proposal templates compared to, let's say, a family foundation, or compared to other institutions. Maybe embassies would have much simpler templates as well. But the thing is, a master concept framework, if you have that, it would be easier for you guys to transpose or to create uh that idea, that project idea, to that template, to so that it would be instead of creating new ideas, instead of spending time to develop newer ideas, it's you can just use what you have already prepared. So that's the idea of a master concept framework for us. And I hope it's something that it would appeal to you guys as well. So next slide. So are some of the elements that we usually have in master concept frameworks. Particularly, these are the common elements there is in any proposal, particularly the core concept. But there would be other requirements such as maybe risk and mitigation strategy, sustainability strategy. But I think that's a different discussion altogether, because those initiatives have their own ways of being done. But for now, a master concept framework needs to have a very complete problem statement. And I think I left out the word, but problem statement and analysis. There should be a very concise analysis of the main problem that your organization is trying to address. At the same time, as opposed to problem statement, a master concept framework also needs a solution statement. So there's a problem, uh, particularly for the context that you have. What is the proposed solution that your organization intends to propose for this? Then, of course, assisting or supporting the solution statement would be key strategies and activities. How do you um, how do you address the solution? So how do you address the objectives or the solution statement that you have created in order to address the problem? key ingredient of the master concept framework as well is knowing who are the enablers of your solution, or your concept framework itself. So stakeholder mapping is a key initiative to that. So in any development initiative, whether you work in agriculture, in health, in education, stakeholder mapping or stakeholders within multi-stakeholders approach is always a very good approach in terms of the addressing key challenges in different sectors. So I do hope that you would be able to look at who are the enablers of your solution. Maybe you would see that the government can be a disabler or an enabler of your solution. Um, Bureaucracy can be a disabler or an enabler of your solution. Or maybe, it would make it easier for you to use your solution if you have community-based organizations or community-based groups, youth groups, uh, other social groups within the localities that you're working in, as part of your strategy. So knowing and mapping out the stakeholders is a key strategy for a master concept framework. Lastly, but not the least, and probably the most not really controversial, but I would say it's the hardest one to really nail for any proposal development or any concept framework is the budget and timeline. Unlike a usual grant application, in developing a master concept framework, we don't have a specific grant, what you call this grant funding limit that we have indicated. So, and also we don't have a duration or project duration indicated. You would see there in certain grant applications by USAID, they would say that the funding limit would be let's say 300,000 USD. So we can't ask for more, or we can ask for more, but we can indicate more in the budget, but we can mention other sources in the budget stream, other sources for budget there. But here we are, the assumption is that we don't have a specific grant application to apply for yet. So it really comes down to how you guys would budget your own initiatives based on the local context of your group, or your organization. For example, events. I know that you guys hold a lot of events, or hold a lot of like trainings, or maybe initiatives, or even your businesses would have certain allocations for expenses or expenditures. That can be a basis on how you define what your budget for each of the solutions or the key strategies of your activities. Similarly, you would already have a benchmark of how much time does it take to, let's say, engage certain stakeholders. For example, I'm just going to say a context in the Philippines because me and Eds are from the Philippines. In the Philippines, oftentimes government is really um hard to engage immediately. You need to have like 2 to 3 months time or leeway time for engaging them. So that's also something that you can already, you know, pinpoint in your own timelines, particularly for the key strategies and activities. So basically, before we move on to the next slide, an MCF is not a new thing. And I think you guys are also realizing that as well, that this is something that's already been there with your own initiatives. It's just something that we need to structure to make it stronger, to make it more compelling for funders so that it will be easier for them to approve. It will be easier for them to also, when you pitch to them, it will be easier for them to increase their attention towards it. So yeah, I think this is it for this slide. In any case, if you guys have any questions, feel free to message the chat box. I'll try to address them as much as I can. Yeah, for the second one, so I already introduced the MCF. But we are going to another section which focuses now into what is the context of your NCF. Um, Maybe in the chat box, I do want to know, in you could, if you guys could also, like, just add in the chat, what specific sector are you working in right now? So I'm actually quite curious to know what sectors you guys are working in. So just message it in the chat, and I'll give you maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 3 minutes rather. Hi, Dr. Vanida, you're there. So it's agriculture and food service, wash, climate, agriculture, health education, agri-tech sector. We are incubator, accelerator, sector agnostic. That's great. That's actually quite interesting. Crime, legal tech, justice. Yeah. Naomi's from agriculture, climate assistance, management consulting. So I see a lot in agri-tech. They're also like agnostic, meaning very broad in terms of selection of sectors. Health innovation, youth, blue green business, entrepreneurship. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for those who are, yeah, agri-tech and climate, who sent in their sectors. It's actually quite interesting. Um, yeah, Assist actually also works in agriculture, particularly in helping farmers out in building their capacity. Particularly for Philippines and Vietnam, we have done our work there, so it's interesting to see a lot of agriculture and agribusiness groups here, entrepreneurship as well. So the next section will be dealing with knowing your sector. I know you guys have been, working in that sector for quite some time. So you would know that there are a lot of challenges that you are facing, not only on a day-to-day basis, but in a wider scope itself. You would be addressing key challenges, and maybe some of your businesses, some of your initiatives are really leaning towards addressing those challenges. Hence, you created your own groups, or maybe that's why your groups existed in the first place. And actually, that's a very interesting thing to see as well in your organization. So next slide. Yeah. So in order to build up a compelling concept framework, organization must identify the problems they are trying to solve. So um knowing what the problem is will give rise to, making our own solutions really compelling. Oftentimes, one of the key things that the funders really have a hard time with, not really just some even us assist. Whenever there are times we fail applications, grant applications, and we receive letters, let's say from the EU, they would mention like specific areas that we could improve. They would mention that there is a disconnect with, how your solution addresses specific problems. How does it address specific initiatives, or how does it address specific challenges they noted within the grant documents that they sent out? So, those things happen, but it takes one really it takes effort for us to really understand what are the gaps that we need to address within the sectors that we are working in. Let's say in agriculture, there are a lot of like gaps in, let's say, particularly in the context of the countries that we've worked in. There are a lot of gaps in terms of um income for farmers, despite being the having an essential work in food security. They are left behind in terms of uh uplifting their general income, and most often farmer families are below the poverty threshold for some countries. So that's a gap that and a problem that we have seen in a lot of countries that we have worked with. So I think there are also problems that you guys would see. But it also helps that when we identify problems, we identify them through three levels. So maybe I could show that in the next slide here. It's yeah. So three levels of identifying your own problems and aligning it for your initiatives as well. First, understand global thematic priorities. So there are a lot of global thematic priorities that has already been stated by key groups like multilateral and bilateral institutions or even UN. So UN would have like the Sustainable Development Goals. Those goals outline what they want to see in the next decade or so. It depends on the year that the UN SDG has stated, but those things are what we call the thematic priorities, meaning they mention there what are the key challenges based on their studies, based on their own own researches that they want to address in this decade. It should also be noted that if you belong in Africa and in Asia, Asian Development Bank or African Development Bank would also have key reports, particularly for development strategies that you can take a look at. They mention agriculture, health, jobs, even other types of social services like uh, human rights, justice, democracy as well. U.S. based institutions as well. They provide like key studies on that. So it takes effort for you to understand what are the global thematic priorities at hand that you could really dig deep in based on your own sectors that you mentioned: agriculture, climate, ecosystems, management, consulting, entrepreneurship. What are those global priorities that you could take a look at, and how can you align it with your own sectoral priorities as well? Now, the next level is country specific priorities. So I know a lot of us are from different countries here. Um, there are some from Africa, from Asia as well. So me and Eds and Rod are from the Philippines, and some are from other parts of Asia. Country specific priorities are, also usually it's aligned within the sustainable development goals. So it's not really that different, but you would know a more specified issue that they would want to address. For example, certain countries would release what we call development priorities every year. Every year, they would have a specific document detailing what are the development priorities for 2024, for 2025, or even, for, let's say, sometimes it's not just yearly, maybe it's for 3 years. That's something that you guys need to align with in terms of how you can align your own initiatives as well. Knowing the specific country challenges, knowing the specific global challenges would help you um, get a better sense of what your sectors are addressing or what your sectors are currently experiencing right now. Although, of course, nothing beats, aligning with local partners and enablers, which is something I think most of us are doing, particularly those that are much more involved in the sector specific works that we have been doing. So we consult with key enablers and stakeholders. We consult with government if need be. We consult with community-based organizations that we are working in. We consult even with our consumers if we have a specific product that we're using as an entrepreneur. This is to know what are the specific topics, challenges that they are currently interested in or they are currently looking at. So if we are able to align these three, we will have a great case for what we call the problem analysis and problem statement for our own projects or goals. Um, by aligning it, I mean, you also have to. It's actually a very tedious process, a bit of a tedious process. In assist, what we did was we did the landscape analysis for specific topics. For example, agriculture. We developed decarbonizing agriculture master concept framework because that's one of the work that we have done in the past. So we looked at what are the global thematic priorities in terms of decarbonizing certain sectors, and of course we connected agriculture to it. And then in the country specific priorities, we looked at what are the specific priorities of Vietnam, Philippines, India, and some of the other countries that we worked in terms of decarbonizing agriculture. And lastly, we talked with a lot of enablers, both at top management level and at the local level, just so that we could have an alignment with them. That is this something that you're interested this year? Is this something that you're experiencing this year? And we are able, and through that kind of process, we are able to, completely align the problems that we or the challenges that we want to address. Hence, doing that, we are able to create a much more better narrative compared to how we created it before. Because before we were just addressing it based on the need for the proposal for the grant. Usually, I mean, it can't be helped whenever there's a new grant that's been released by a multilateral or bilateral institution. It's a very specific ask from them. So usually, it's just a response that we do towards those applications. Yeah, I think that's it. Um, before I move on, I do want to know, currently you guys mentioned all the sectors that you're working in. But I do want to hear, even to hear if ever that there's someone who wants to, to share their own experiences. What are the key challenges your organization is currently addressing? Uh, what are the key challenges in the sector that you're addressing? So you can type it in the chat, or maybe if you want to unmute yourself and talk and share, it would be interesting if you could do that. So please do.
Hi.
Hello, Maureen.
Hi. I think for us, one of the key challenges we are trying to address is access to capital. We would find out in Tanzania market, like most incubator and accelerators do provide capacity building to entrepreneurs in different aspects and different sectors, as well as access to community. But then in the end of the program, whenever you ask the entrepreneurs, okay, what else do you need? That would be like money or capital. So what we do is that we have microfinance where we provide like small capital to entrepreneurs in terms of like Kama grants or debts or some sort of equity. So this has been one of the biggest challenges we're trying to address. But the thing is that whenever you're applying for grants, most of the grants do not allow you to offer micro grants in the projects. So the biggest challenge has been, how do we secure enough capital to run a revolving fund so that we are able to address this need in increase how we address the need, because as of now we have just disbursed some sort of like $4.7 million, but now it's still small. It's still a small gap. And we feel like having that in our programs would actually, having that the access of capital or funds in our program for entrepreneurs would actually enhance the capacity at which the entrepreneurs grow, and also their maturity and how we retain them within the hubs.
Yeah. Thank you, Maureen. So that's actually very interesting. Access to capital. So I also see that there's a lot of like need for that, particularly in the development sector. I think looking at the global thematic priorities as well, there have been movements in terms of like development banks, really interested in having more such projects, Maureen. My suggestion, I'm already adding a suggestion. Maybe you could look at development banks like Rabo Foundation. That's a really good, you know, type of foundation who provides access to equity for smaller organization. Maybe that's something that you can take a look at. Um, yeah, but there are also others. I think Pollinate Impact will releases like grants. Releases grants list from time to time. Maybe there would be an interesting opportunity as well. Um, yeah. Any more? I would want to hear more from you guys. Yeah, Rabo Foundation. Yes. It's under the Rabobank. Okay, so going once, going twice. Okay, so thank you, Maureen, and thank you, everyone. So the next part, knowing now is, knowing the problem and knowing the challenges that we experience is just the first step to actually addressing the problem that we have. Now, of course, we need to know the gaps and the solutions to the problems that we want to address. Now, next slide, please. Before we can build upon the solution, you must first have an integral understanding of the gaps within the sector you're working in. So, for example, we have identified the key problems already. But there is uh, there is a need for us to understand what are the current landscape or benchmarks within the actual sector that we are working in. For example, when I say earlier, I said like decarbonizing agriculture. Of course, in all countries, decarbonizing operations, decarbonizing projects has always been existing. Greening projects is not a new concept. And most of the time, our ideas itself are not new ideas. But the thing is, how do we position ourselves so in such a way that our initiatives would be different, or our initiatives would be essential? Usually, one of the key uh, challenges in grant applications is that when we apply for a funding opportunity, they would say, we don't want to fund your proposal because your proposal is already being done by another group, or we have already funded a similar project in the similar area because of this. So one key thing is to ask what makes your initiative different and what existing gaps does it address. To do that is you need to have a very comprehensive analysis of the gap within the sectors you're working in. For example, if the problem that we have is unemployment for, let's say, a specific locality, let's say out of school youth, uh, they are having a hard time getting employment. I think I
Josh. Lost you a bit. I think you're back now. We
sorry
lost you
about
for
that.
like
Yeah,
2 minutes. No worries.
yeah. Okay. So I'm back. So where was I? Okay, so for example, unemployment for out of school youth is a problem for different countries, for a lot of countries, particularly, if we want to reach more economic gain for the country, not only that, to uplift the economic capacities of our youth and their families, that is also a good problem for us to address. So there are a lot of solutions already in that front. Education, maybe technical vocational solutions as well have already been being addressed. Sometimes it's a government-led initiative. Other times it's an initiative by another group, like a nonprofit or maybe even for-profit groups as well, provide certain solutions as part of their CSR initiatives. Um, Now, what needs to be done is to know what key things they are leaving out, because oftentimes they all solutions are not the be all and end all of any challenge or problem. Maybe there are key populations that they aren't able to reach out. For example, they focus only on urban populations for out of school youth, particularly because the solution is a very internet-based or technical platform-based type of solution. Like, maybe it's a e-learning platform, etc. So maybe that's a solution that they have. But rural areas, school youth, or out of school youth might not have the same access as those at the urban areas because of internet connectivity, because of technology. So, those are the things that we can take a look at. If though It's looking at those gaps, those areas that are not addressed, and making it so that we float it in our own proposals, in our own concept frameworks. It really enhances the way that we are able to really focus the solutions that we have. So spotting the gaps in the problem's context and knowing what specific focus area we should do is a good strategy for creating a concept framework. Um, yeah, next slide, please. So next is articulating your solution. So basically, our solution, in order to make it more effective, is that we need to really know how to articulate it. So there are a lot of here that are, uh, the solutions that there are a lot of elements here for our solutions. Um, First is, so I'll have to go through them one by one actually. First is beneficiaries. All of you have your own beneficiaries or consumer base that you are serving, particularly for your own organizations. Maybe there are all other entrepreneurs within the sector in agriculture. Maybe they are also other community-based groups that you are also supporting. Um, and maybe they are other groups or stakeholders that are interested within the sector that you're working in. You have to understand who is the solution for before you can actually proceed to anything further. Because oftentimes it's we have a solution already in mind. We have an action that we want to do. We want to do a training. We want to create an e-learning platform. We want to create um, a guideline, or even a framework for intervention for mental health, etc. But the thing is, funding agencies or even institutions or other groups often looks at who is the main target of this. So you need to understand key beneficiaries, and you need to be able to make a distinction between your direct end beneficiaries to secondary beneficiaries. Maybe in your solution for agri-tech and climate, you might be addressing the capacities of the universities so that eventually they could also enhance the capacities of their students for agriculture. That's one thing. But knowing the reason why you're capacitating the the universities themselves is that would enable you to get a better narrative flow, particularly for your solution, in articulating your solution. So that must be said for beneficiaries. Next would be specific action steps must be established for the solution itself. When we say solution statement, you must understand what is the key action that you really want to do. For EU-based grants, if you have experienced EU-based grants, they call the proposal as action itself. So they just specify it as a singular action. What is the action that you want to propose, um, etc. But what is the key action steps that must be established in order to reach your solution? For example, let's say e-learning platform. Before you can do an e-learning platform, what are the necessary steps to do? Maybe you need to um see if there's a demand for it. Maybe you would need to train up specific capacities before you could establish a key e-learning platform, develop the materials needed for it, or even develop the platform itself. And engage with key stakeholders that must be engaged prior to releasing the platform itself. So those things you must be able to articulate or to specify. You don't need in creating your master concept framework, you don't need to have it all in a proposal way. You could start with, creating a table. Let's say the problem. What is the problem? And you could just do a bulletin list for now. Like, this is the problem we want to address, and align it with the solution. Like, the solution, what are the action steps to address the problems that we have? If there is a problem that doesn't have an action step for this project, maybe it's not something that you can focus on for this project that you're doing. So that must be there. Next is key performance indicators. In every action that we do, there must be a key performance indicator used so that we could measure if we are successful or not. Key performance indicators, at least for the development of the master concept framework, you don't need the exact numbers yet, but maybe you need to understand, if we want to really help the farmers, what factors do we need to address? Do we need to address their yield? Do we need to address their income generating capacity? Like, are we measuring how much the project will increment their income after the project implementation? Or how much the carbon would be offset from the project after the implementation. So those things we can already identify, at least at the high level, once you have established what are the key actions you must do. Because each action must lead to a specific output, and each output should be reflective of an indicator that we want to see in our project. Next is, who are our enablers? Enablers can be partners, they can be stakeholders, they can be government, even government partners that we have worked with, or maybe even other funders. Maybe other funders are interested in your solution, in addressing specific sections of your solution. So we must identify those enablers in terms of really digging into our concept. And in doing so, it will be easier for us to know how to engage them. It will be easier for us to really strategize how to get them on board with the project itself. Lastly is, what is the intended impact? If you guys would see the process of this, I don't know if you've heard of the concept, and I hope you've heard of it because of grant applications. The theory of change um, model. Usually you'll see it in U.S. Department of State or U.S. Government opportunities. They require us to create the theory of change, or at least define the theory of change that we want to have for the projects that we are proposing. In that, we have our input, usually the beneficiaries. What is the process or the action that we must do? Of course, the output and the key indicators of that output and the impact. So at the end of it, we have a lot of challenges that we mentioned earlier. We have a lot of challenges and gaps that we want to address. But what is the intended impact that we want to address? Impact doesn't need to be addressed at the onset or at the end of your project. Oftentimes, it's a long-term ongoing thing. But knowing how you could contribute to addressing that impact is key to understanding or to giving a much stronger narrative for your project, because you would be able to say to your funders that, hey, this solution can greatly address or can greatly contribute to the efforts being done under this type of sector, under this type of initiative. Let's say decarbonizing agriculture, out of school employment and education of out of school youth, um, etc. So those things um, really stems from understanding what is the intended impact that we have. Lastly, is just, a tip from us. Maybe consider creating a schematic for your solution. Um, in the next page, I have a sample that we did. So actually, this is a sample of the project framework or the concept framework that we did before. This is for the intention or the target groups of this is for uniformed personnel, particularly in the Philippines. Usually after their service, uniformed personnel, they are oftentimes they are given a huge sum of money as thanks for their service, but oftentimes they are not educated or they are not trained to manage that fund. So they would use it, in having businesses that since that is not their training, business management is not their training. Oftentimes it fails and it doesn't really create a good impact not only for them but for their families. So we wanted to create a project that would enable us to prepare the uniformed personnel for life outside their service, particularly for integrating them within the economy of not only the plan was not only for the Philippines but also for Vietnam and other Southeast Asian countries. So um through this is through different interventions like training, capacity building, etc. But also, we targeted industry employers because oftentimes industry employers, as you would know, they would only consider um in this younger people for their employment. However, if we engage them at the onset and we show them that these people, even if they are not necessarily young, um, they are very disciplined people who can be trained for good work uh, within their operations. This is something that we could, create as a project as well. So we have two levels of interventions there. One for those uniform personnel retire at the pre-retirement stage and industry employers. And you could see the key outputs that we have like added, like these are the KPIs or the initial KPIs that we were looking at, like 3 month building sessions, online modules and learning manuals will be created, skills passports, and certificates and recognition materials, as well as career counseling workshops will be done. Also, we plan to create like a market integration platform so that it will be easier for uniform personnel to get work, to get internship experience again for through the industry employer network that we will be creating during that time. And career fairs as well, both virtual and in-person career fairs. While also, having some key outputs for industry employers, like guidelines on immersion engagement for um pre-retirement uniform personnel, guidelines on inclusive hiring. So we could also input their different inclusivity concepts, not only just for the pre-retirement personnel, but also for a diversity for gender, for um race, as well for different types of diversity. And lastly is the portfolio development for particularly for creating like the terms of reference for jobs that they would place these pre-retirement personnel. So at the end of it, these are the key outputs that we identified, and these are the social impact that we want to address, the impact that we want to have. Better economic inclusion, economic and social inclusion for uniformed personnel. It the more that we better integrate it into the economy, and for social inclusion, the better also their mental health are, particularly if they went through anything traumatic during their service. Skilled retirees ready for the next chapter. So this is just part of their preparation as well. We also considered, creating like an entrepreneurship program as well, so that if they want, instead of being employed again, maybe they want to be business owners. But as I mentioned, most often than not, most of the pre-retirement personnel don't have the training for that. So we can train them for that as well. And lastly is a more inclusive and diversified workforce. So you can see here the very concept, or at least the concept framework that we want to address. There is an input to it, which is the target groups, beneficiary groups that we want to do, action or the specific actions we want to do, like the key interventions, specific outputs, and the KPIs, at least the high level KPIs, as well as the impact that we want to see. My suggestion is, because this is just an initial session for you guys, is maybe you could consider creating a simple table. And actually, if ever that you will be joining the next session, Rod will be sending out another table, which actually helps you to classify not only this, but also, the whole concept framework that you want to classify as well. So yeah, I think this is a sample that we can send out. I don't know if, Rod, maybe we could also, do we send this out as well to them, the deck
Yes.
itself? Yeah, so
Yes, we
you
can.
could always take a look at it in the deck form, and you could emulate it within your own spaces. So it would be good for you to really try to really structure your own solution framework as well. Um, yeah. Before I move on, I want to know, maybe there is someone here who wants to, share specific solutions or programs that they want to address. I think Maureen already shared a bit about hers. Maybe there are others as well who can share about their own programs, their own solutions. And maybe, it would be a good point of discussion as well. Anyone? In my university, if everyone is silent, it's either they really understood you or they fell asleep. So I hope it's the first one that, that you understood everything. Um, yeah, I think actually I realized I was going a bit fast, so feel free to ask me questions. The next slide is Ed's. Oh, it's already Q&A. Um, so this is actually just an introduction to it. It's basically knowing what your problem is and knowing what your solution is and being able to articulate them properly. Because I would tell you, most often than not, if we have a strong argument on our problem analysis and our solution statement, if we already have a strong argument and narrative on that, we would other things would follow, like timelines, budget. It those things, while very tedious and very um sometimes it's very hard to understand what they really want, but still those things are easier to follow once you have a very strong concept framework that you're following. So maybe I finished earlier, Rod. I hope you don't mind. But maybe we
Right.
have yeah, go ahead if we have questions. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you for taking us through this. It was really helpful to get to know, really like tips on how we can improve, uh, how to do our grant proposals in the general sense, right? I think that was really helpful. Well, we'd like to open the room for any questions for Joshua and Assist Asia on either maybe a specific thing that they're facing right now when it comes to grants or something about the master concept framework. You can raise your hand. You can also put it in the comments. I see Naomi's comment. This is something that we can pick up in Pollinate, but definitely a great idea to have a grant bid win rate to see and to compare with the rest of the industry. We'll take note of this. Thank you, Naomi. Again, feel free to unmute or comment. Or we can also get to know some of the challenges when it comes to grant writing for the organizations that are present here. Maybe there's something that Joshua can offer while we have him. He is a great resource. So we can really maximize this time to get to know the framework or even go into some detail with a current grant.
Hi everyone, I think I can ask a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Joshua, you said that the reason for lower win rates or why grants are unsuccessful is not attaching your solution to the problem. What would you say are sort of like from your experience, top three other reasons why those grants don't match with certain bidders?
Mm. Okay, so what other reasons aside from that are you asking? Yeah. So there are different reasons why funders sometimes our applications are not funded. One thing is that maybe there are times you don't know the funder's strategy or priorities, which is one. That's why actually in Assist, when we before we apply for different funding opportunities, we really have a very long analysis and review of them those funding opportunities before we apply for them, because we want to see, for example, if funder A is a global grant, it gives a global grant, meaning that the competition is quite high if it's a global grant. Um, we would look at the funding history of the funder. How many did they fund in our target countries? For example, in Philippines, in Vietnam, in India. How many fund opportunity or projects they funded, and what type of projects did they fund? Because it would really speak about what are their preference is in terms of projects. Do they like technology development? Do they like focus on women, on gender, etc., as well as focused on um if if their geographic focus does not include your country's self, maybe it's better to look for other funding opportunities. That's one of the things that we found as well during our grant applications. And another thing is a strong budget, a strong financial credibility. So it really, one of the things that we always say to our partners is really to ensure your own certifications, government compliances, tax compliances, or any certifications that you are a nonprofit, etc. Those types of compliances, while very tedious, they are really big things that the funders are looking at. There are times, that even if your proposal is really good, sometimes you get through the first round and then they do a due diligence check and they realize, okay, you don't have a good track record, or you don't have a good or you don't have an updated financial statement. It's a big you know, red mark for them in terms of like applications. So oftentimes those organizations are not successful. I think there are more, Naomi, but maybe that would be for another session as well.
Thanks, Sasha. Thanks, Naomi, for your question. I think I have a question, Joshua, in terms of, because you mentioned when it comes to the solution, right? It and articulating it seemed to be uh much easier, especially when you have a focus area. So for
Yeah.
those who are sector agnostic, and there are some in the room who tend to be sector agnostic here, what are guidelines or tips that you'd have for them to also specify their own solutions, even though they don't really necessarily have a sector that they focus on?
Actually, I'm not. I hope this doesn't come off as something like favoritism or so. But sector agnostic groups are actually like assist in a way, because we are quite broad in how we do things. Hence, there's much more opportunity for us to develop specific programs or develop master concept frameworks in areas that we have worked in the longest. Maybe you have worked the longest in the health area, or maybe your current network is much more focused in agriculture, meaning it might give you an opportunity to create a master concept framework for agriculture today. But maybe in the future, if you want to look at other opportunities, and this does not limit others who are already, working in a specific sector, by the way. Maybe your groups would also like to branch out eventually. Maybe you could branch out to other sectors in the future. And that's at least that's the freedom those sector agnostic organizations would have. It's quite. I'll also say that it's quite challenging, because unlike certain groups, it's quite focused in terms of beneficiary groups, in terms of sectors. and even in geography, so it's easier to really articulate your solution. But also it's quite rewarding if you get a lot of wins in your multiple MCFs. So that's something that I would say.
Awesome. Thank you, Joshua. Paul has a question in the comments. I'll read it out. Grant seekers approach grants from their lens. Hence, one, is it a good practice to get proposals reviewed by an external person who has worked with donors? Two, discuss and ask questions to the donor before writing a proposal. And or three, I guess, attempt to co-create a proposal with the donor.
Yeah, that's a very good question actually. So the first one, I would say yes, particularly if the credibility of that reviewer, in terms of, if they work a lot with a donor, they would know the ins and outs. Particularly, they would know the particular priorities or how they really do internal reviews within the funding institution. So I would say yes, if you could have someone reviewed by an external person who has worked with donors. Next would be discuss and ask. Oh yeah, definitely. In number two is discussing and asking questions to the donors before writing a proposal. If there is an avenue for you to discuss and ask questions, because there are donors who are quite restrictive. Let's say USAID would have a brief period of, like, asking them questions. And once that ends, they'll just release a Q&A document. But there are some funders who like adds like or opens an info session that where you can directly ask them. Or oftentimes we did try as well to reach out to the funders themselves and tell them, hey, we have clarifications with the opportunity that you released. We are very interested. And that's also a good thing to try. Although I would say, it's not that easy sometimes because there are strict donors who might say, we don't want to talk about it because we have strict guidelines, etc. But I would tell you guys, who's stopping you from doing that? So no one's stopping anyone from doing that. We could do that anyway. Lastly is, yes, it's better to attempt to co-create with a proposal with the donor actually, if we can, and if the donor is receptive to it, that's very good. That's much more preferable because the chances of success is higher if they are interested in co-creating with us.
All right. Thank you. There are two more questions. Great. We're picking up on the questions here in the chat. Paul has one more. One issue that I have seen for incubators and accelerators is the inability to predict impact. This is because incubated businesses succeed and fail while most donors want to see predictable impact. How should one articulate impact given this uncertainty?
Well, that's a great question, particularly for incubated business incubators in particular. Um, in terms of articulation of your impact, because you have to really state what social impact you want to do for particularly for the concept that you're working on. Um, it would be better for the incubators or the for your group yourself to take a look at um what are the perceived impacts that you want your incubators to achieve at the most. Although I do understand because for example, I would say that since this is not an incubator network, I would say that we are quite new to the incubator space itself. Um, but it's a great information to know that there are a lot of incubated businesses that's not predictable in a sense in terms of impact. But yeah, so I would say that maybe there is a way, or there are data or information that we could look at in terms of seeing impact themselves? Because I do believe all solutions in itself, most of the solutions that we propose to any development initiative is already existing. Most of the newer proposals are just adopted or adapted from existing ideas, and maybe um it really just takes us to research more into the impact that we want to achieve as an organization, if that's what it takes to really articulate it.
Great. Thanks, Joshua. Um, Dr. Juanita had a follow on the question. Grant seekers are also encouraged to cultivate a relationship with donors. How long should a grant seeker wait to have a proposal reviewed? And does cold emailing work for someone to review a proposal?
Is cold emailing for someone to review a proposal really possible? Okay. Actually, Dr. Juanita, that's also a question that we we are asking. How long should a grant seeker wait for to have a proposal reviewed? Oftentimes, big grant applications with USAID, EU Commission, they would have specific periods already in place, but sometimes they don't. It's not really, they don't follow through with it because of certain things. Like, for example, more recently, I think in the U.S. Government funding, most of the funding were delayed because of bureaucratic interventions within the federal government itself. So there are just release of the fundings have been delayed for some of the grants and for some of the proposals. So, reviews as well as final decisions on certain grants are also pushed back. So it's really hard. I would say it's hard to predict exactly how long a grant seeker would wait because it differs from grant applications to grant application. But I would say what we do is we give it a quarter, 3 months time. And then we try to, after a quarter, we try to follow up because I think there's no harm in following up certain applications unless specified by some of the donors that they don't want to receive a follow-up email. But most of them, they don't really mind if we follow up. Family foundations and corporate foundations are easier to follow up because they have specific emails and platforms we could connect. Maybe you would also have people, would have known people within the organizations themselves or funding agencies themselves that you could connect with. So it's easier to follow them up. But multilateral, bilateral are often more tricky because there is a bureaucracy or bureaucratic process, specific process that you need to go through before you can follow it up. So yeah.
Great question so far. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Juanita. Thank you, Joshua. Um, okay. Still opening the room if there are still more questions. I am also curious, Joshua, now that let's say the organizations are thinking about their MCF, really starting it out. What would be maybe common pitfalls or challenges that they would face while thinking about their MCF, and how can they maybe avoid it or mitigate these pitfalls while they're starting to think about their MCF?
The common challenge is being lost in all the information that you will be looking at. Because, for example, the first step that I initiated or that I specified is looking at the problem of your sector. The common challenge that you might face is because there are a lot of problems in agriculture, a lot of problems in education and entrepreneurship and skills development, etc. So it's difficult to pinpoint what specific area you want to do, or it's really difficult to, because maybe your organization wants to position themselves in multiple problems or challenges. My suggestion is um if your organization has a specific service line or product or specific proposal that you have prepared before, maybe you could use that as a benchmark already. Look at um look at the problems that you have researched on, or the challenges that you have researched on, and maybe you could benchmark, or you could connect them from there. Create a clear narrative from the problem to the solution, just so that you wouldn't be lost with all the information. Because we also, when we were creating some of the MCF, I mean the decarbonizing agriculture and master concept framework itself, when I was writing it, I was also drowned in a lot of information on decarbonization, agriculture, and just being able to know what specific area my organization works on or is working on help guide me through how I can structure it more properly. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Joshua. Paul is asking, is it possible for incubators accelerators participating in the session to share grant proposals or concept notes that they have submitted recently, maintaining anonymity, and learn from each other on how each has articulated? It's a great idea, Paul. We can definitely entertain this. We will be sending out this document, and then as well as a table that Assist Asia has also prepared. And then maybe we can have some sort of group to share this and then have feedback from each other. Again, as a reminder to everyone here in the room, that this part one, we are making it available to the whole network. And then for the second session, if you'd like to join us to get into the nitty-gritty of the MCF, it will be a members only session. So even an sent application to Pollinate Impact will already suffice as a part of the members. So we would want all of you, of course, to join us for part two. So we hope that that is something that you'd consider for joining us for the part two session. Okay, I'll open it again if there are any last questions or even takeaways, actually, if you have any insights that you'd like to bring to the group. I'm sure it'll be helpful for the entire room to hear. Yes, Dr. Unida, that's right. So as part of being a member of the Pollinate Impact Network, we also have office hours with Assist Asia, where they do help us with grant proposals for our organizations. And I'm glad that Dr. Juanita has some proposals that she'd like to talk to
Two
Assist
proposals.
about. Yeah, two proposals. So I think Sophia has sent out we've sent out the office hours link where there is a Google Calendar for our members. I'd love to hear from the others in the room. Any insights, if not questions, insights, feedback from the session that you'd love to share?
I would like to just add something quickly.
Sure.
Kind of a
Go ahead.
testimony for the office hours and working with Joshua. So I worked with Joshua several months ago. It was for a different proposal, but his going through this framework and just kind of helping with the guidance of how to write a proposal. I mean, and I've written proposals for several years, but it's different when it's, it's a different part. I'm in a different season of my life, I should say. And was able to successfully receive funding. So for a proposal that was submitted in May. It was very different, Joshua, than what we talked about. This is a different project, but I was very happy to receive, we're happy to receive our first kind of U.S. federal grant that will be able to kind of go into the other work that we want to do. So in case anybody was a little hesitant of, using the office hours, I would definitely say it was very helpful. And Joshua, you will see me again because I have some more ideas to go through.
Sure, sure. See you again, Dr. Juanita.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Juanita. We're really happy that it's been a useful tool for you. That's great to hear. Right. Any other insights from the group or feedback?
Hi, hello.
Hi, Joanna. Yes, please.
Yes, Joanna from Impact Hub Abidjan. So I wanted to thank you for the session because it was really interesting. I'd like to know concerning the second part, would it be more practical? What would we get from the second session? Because I really want to attend.
Awesome. Thank you, Joanna. So Joshua, maybe you can help us with this one. What would part two be in store for the people who will join?
So for part two, this is actually focusing more into how to build up on what we have talked about in part one. Part one is just the core of it. Part two will be looking at the timeline, budget of your initiatives. The team is planning to make it much more practical and much more, much more interactive actually than part one. So it would be interesting if you could also join that session as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. Anyone else? Questions, comments? All right. If there are none, we'd love to thank Assist Asia again and Joshua for being with us today and introducing us to MCF, which from the looks of it, from the crowd, it really is something that the network needs, the ecosystem needs, and it will really help in the arduous task of creating these grant proposals, make it more efficient and a little less time consuming in the end. So before we end, we are just launching the feedback form, which should be up on your screens right now to find out how the session was for you today and just to give us feedback to improve the sessions moving forward. So some people were asking about whether the presentation will be available. Yes, we will send it to everybody who has registered to the session, as well as we will inform you once the recordings will be up on YouTube. So this one will be something that we will have publicly available as well. So thank you for those who have already sent in their feedback. We'll wait for some more. But yeah, Joshua, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we end for today's session?
Uh, I'd like to thank everyone for for being in the session as well. So I do hope that you learned a lot with this session. Basically, what we really wanted is not, what we really presented is not really a new idea to you guys because I know you all have been working tirelessly within your own sectors, within your own partners, incubators, as well as other stakeholders as well. So what we really want is to help you structure what you really want to do within your sectors, how do you want to structure to propose them, and how to make it more attractive to donors in the long run. So yeah, I hope you learned a lot through this session.
Definitely. I learned a lot today. So thank you, Joshua, for taking us through that. And thank you everyone for being here today. Again, our next session for the MCF is scheduled on August 13th. So there is time to think about becoming a Pollinate Impact Network member, to lodge in your applications. Again, that's all we need for us to consider you to be part of part two. But for those who will One for part one, we'll still be sending the presentation as well as the document that Assist Asia has kindly prepared for us, as well as the link to the recording to this session. So August 13th is a Tuesday, about 3 weeks from now. And that's when we will go through the more interactive, more practical way of using the MCF. So again, we'd like to thank you and we hope that you have a good rest of your day. And we'll see you again in our next session.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.